One of my cheat codes to being able to scale e-commerce brands has been running YouTube ads through demand gen campaigns. And this is something a little bit niche, not a lot of people talk about, because 99% of e-commerce brands are spending most of their money on meta ads, trying to just scale it up and squeeze a little bit more out of their ad spend. But the problem is you're competing against everybody else who is also trying to do the same thing. So CPMs are just climbing and your profit is increasing. So today I wanted to go over how you set up YouTube ads campaigns, how you actually be successful, and how I'm actually able to scale client accounts to 100K per month with YouTube ads profitably. So the first thing we want to understand is the actual unit economics of our business. Does the math make sense to be able to run YouTube ads? Number one is you need to have a decent average order value, because if your average order value is $15 or $20 and you have no backend to be able to make sure that this person actually comes back and purchases again or makes a larger order, you will not be successful for YouTube. And I suggest you just don't even watch this video and don't run YouTube. But again, if you're a brand with a higher average order value where, you know, it's on average around $100, $110, and you also have some type of backend mechanism to make sure that somebody subscribes or buys another product or refers somebody else, and there's some type of incentive for them to come back, these are the type of brands that actually kill it on YouTube. Even think about bundling offers. If those are a big component of your business as well, even running YouTube campaigns towards that can actually be successful and lucrative as well. In terms of performance expectations, because you're generating top of funnel demand, the actual campaign itself might look like it's achieving a poor ROAS, but again, that's where you want to use something like Triplewhale, a third-party attribution tool, to be able to measure the first click. Because again, with YouTube ads, you're driving that initial click, the awareness, and then they might be funneled down to your shopping and your Google search campaigns as well, which are going to capture the conversion. So by running YouTube ads directly, you might see a 1.5, 2 to 1 ROAS, and that might be break even for you. You might really see the lift on your Google search and shopping campaigns, obviously the non-branded ones, and even a lift in impressions in branded search campaigns, which indicates, again, it's leading to growth of your brand. So those are the ways that you actually want to assess if this is actually successful. And coming into this with the right mindset is super, super important, because otherwise you run it for 5 days, you don't see the results you think you should be getting, and then you shut off the campaign. And in terms of the recommended daily budget, I would say do not launch with anything under $100 per day, because that way it's just going to take you too long to get results, and you don't have enough feedback or data to give the algorithm to be able to go out and find new customers based on what you're already getting. So launch this at $100 per day. Again, if you're a larger spending account, 20% of your overall Google Ads budget is good as well, because at the end of the day, the more spend you can feed the algorithm, the quicker you get feedback, and then you understand what you need to change, what creatives are working, and how to scale. And likely, as you know, YouTube is obviously a visual format, so you need to have ample creatives. I'm talking being able to refresh the creatives every single week at the very least. Again, at a lower budget, you don't need to do it as often, but at least if you're able to pump in 10 new ads per week, that's going to allow you to keep testing new creatives, find which angles are working, and then scale those as well. Because it's much less to do with, you know, your headlines or descriptions that you put in that can play a role, but it's mostly about your actual video or image that you're running. Again, in this case, we're going to talk about video specifically with YouTube. So now that we have the expectations aligned and then also the math, making sure that it makes sense for your business, let's dive into the actual campaign setup. So to create a demand gen campaign, we want to click the button, new campaign, and then we want to click the sales objective. And then we make sure that just purchases is the actual conversion goal that we're optimizing towards. And then here we have the demand gen campaigns. So we use these demand gen campaigns, even though it says includes short, discover, Gmail, all of the other placements as well, we can actually exclude those, and we can only choose to show for specific placements. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So we continue. In terms of campaign naming, I would just call it demand gen. You can say meta ads winners, and we can say where we're targeting the US, for example. And maybe even if we have a certain type of landing page, we can add that as well, or we can just say product page. And then I deselect the product feed. And then as the campaign goal, we want to select conversions. Now, the goal with a bidding strategy that we want to take with this campaign is we start on a maximize conversions bidding strategy, because we're just trying to get as many sales through the door as possible through this campaign. And then when we're consistently getting sales, I'm talking 30 in a month, let's say. Again, it depends on your AOV as well, because if you're a higher average order value brand, it's going to take you longer probably to get more sales, because each sale is more valuable. But if we can move to a TCPA once we get those 30 conversions or so, that way we can make sure that actual cost per purchase is under control when we're scaling up the budget. And then even again, if you want to move towards something like conversion value, again, it's blurred out because we just don't have any data in this campaign, we can do that as well. So I'll fluctuate between running a TCPA and then I'll move to conversion value as well with a TROAS. Those are the two bidding strategies that you want to optimize towards. I would not do clicks or YouTube engagements. That's just not the goal. Again, if we're trying to grow our business and get new customer sales, again, the objective is purchases. And then there's view through optimization. I leave this unchecked. And then daily budget, like I said, at least $100 per day, because we're advertising into the US with Canadian dollars. So this would be actually $140 per day, like the algorithm suggested. I leave all of this stuff unchecked. I would add your custom colors just because it's going to make sure, again, it's aligned with your brand. Because again, this is also to some extent a branding play. Like you get two sides of the sword per se, because you're actually getting brand awareness. You're getting in front of a ton of people and people are becoming familiar with your product offering. So again, you want to make sure that everything is aligned in terms of how you actually want to present yourself. And then obviously on the other side, which more important, is we're optimizing towards sales. I would make sure this is configured, the brand guidelines, and then obviously no political ads. And then what's different about these demand gen campaigns as well is you can either choose to do the location targeting on the ad group level or the campaign level. Now, to be transparent, I never really run multiple locations in one campaign. If I'm running US, then I'm going to run Canada in another one. Same with Australia, same with the UK. So they'll never be meshed into just one campaign. But again, you have the option towards doing that if you really want to. Again, like you can toggle this here, even if it's on ad group level, right? It doesn't really matter, because if you start to create new ad groups, again, like you'll just have the same location targeting. You'll just still be targeting US, for example, like the example I have. Ad schedule, I don't really play with too much for ecom, but I will deselect TV screens. I typically don't see a lot of spend going here, but again, like we're really targeting people like on their phones, maybe on their computers as well, for like the 16:9 placements as well, the horizontal videos. Tablets can be meh, but I would leave them to start. That's not a huge deal. And then from here, we can go to ad group 1. Here again, we want to make sure we select the correct location. And then here, I do like to choose the language, just because you don't want it to start serving in like a different language that you just obviously like you're not selling in. So I would always keep it as English. And then this is the cool part. So this is where we actually choose the placements that we want to show for. So for this campaign specifically, because again, we're just running videos, I don't find Google Display, Gmail, Discover, and YouTube in-feed to typically be good. YouTube in-feed, I actually have tried more so like static type of ads, which have performed well. In this video, I would really talk about running in-stream and shorts. Those are going to be the main drivers here. And you can see here as well that we're only serving on these two placements. I would deselect optimized targeting. I have actually tested this and sometimes it can work well. Like what I'll do is I'll exclude all past buyers and then just focus on optimized targeting. I've ran this in some accounts. Sometimes it shits the bed. Sometimes it does very good. But in this example, what I recommend, again, if you're a meta heavy brand and you already have a huge customer list, like over 1,000 different emails of people that have purchased from you before, what we want to do is upload a customer list to Google Ads. And I'll show you how to do that right now. So I duplicated the tab and X'd out, so we still have the actual campaign being built. I suggest you do the same, but go to, on the left side, Tools, Shared Library, Audience Manager. And then what you can do is click the plus customer list and then upload a file manually. And then you can name the audience segment. I would say like all customers or purchasers. And then really you just want to upload the emails. So like it gives you like a template as well. You can just do the emails, but if you have all of this information as well, again, you're giving more data to Google. And like you can just pull this from Shopify, like do a customer list export, upload the CSV here. The duration is fine, 540 days. And then you just click save and continue. And then it should save and start to populate into your account. So it'll take like about 12 hours. And the reason I went onto this tangent a little bit into setting this up is because we want to create lookalike audiences, because especially with YouTube, it's completely different from Meta, where you have Andromeda now, and really your targeting is done by your creative. Here, you actually need to have proper audience targeting in place, because that's how YouTube knows who to go after. The best data we can give it is our own. So I'll set up a lookalike audience. We take all of the customers that we had purchased from us before, and then we try to target people similar to them while still excluding past purchasers. So we're completely optimizing for top of funnel new customers, but we're leveraging the data we have from all of our previous purchasers. But honestly, if you come back to the actual campaign creation, it should show up here, but we're going to click add an audience, and then we can create a new audience here. So I could name this lookalike audience. We can say YouTube ads generic, because this is going to be our like generic audience, not for a specific type of product. But there's some interesting things we can do. So let's do that first step where I said lookalike segment, and then we can do new segment here, and we can say all purchasers in the US, right? And then we have data segments here. So here I do have a email list here, like you can try using that. But again, like, so we did all purchasers here, and then we did all converters. You might already have the all converters like automatically, typically as an automatic audience. But again, if you have a customer list, that will be even better because you're feeding it with way more data, right? So I would suggest if you can do that from Shopify, do that export, or even again, if you're on WooCommerce or any other website provider, should be pretty straightforward to get your customer data. And then we want to make sure it's actually for the correct location. So I would say make sure that this is aligned with the actual locations you're targeting in the campaign, because if you select US, Canada, Australia, it's just not going to match correctly. You can do balanced. I sometimes do broad even as well. I like to do broad. I like the idea of broad. It's worked well for me. So we can do broad here. So then it's going to take a second to populate, obviously. And then some other interesting things we can do. So like I said, exclude remarketing or all converters, for example. So people that bought from us. So like all converters, we're leveraging it as a data signal, but we're not optimizing towards these type of people. And then we can do remarketing. We have like dynamic remarketing, but we can do like all users. So like anybody who's already visited, for example. And then in terms of exclusions, this is where we want to exclude people who have already bought from us. So like all converters. And then also we can even say like dynamic remarketing, people that are kind of into that audience as well. So that we're not using this campaign to like remarket these people as well. So that's something I would keep in mind. And then in terms of your data, like you can add kind of some more signals. I'm just going to leave it broad here. And then something else that we can do as well, this is a pretty slept on feature as well, is you can add certain search terms. So if you have certain keywords or search terms that are performing well in Google search and shopping, I would add these in here. So like you can say XYZ keyword, and then you're gonna find ideas, or you can just add it. And so I would add maybe 10 to 15 of these. You don't have to go overkill, but again, you're just feeding it with more data. And then you can also do people who browse certain type of websites. So you can feed it all of the different competitor websites that you have. And basically what it's doing is people that have been on these websites to show for those people with those type of characteristics, and then maybe even target them as well. So again, like these two, I'd say, are the best type of data that you can give it. It's even better than the audiences that they just have, you know, within Google and YouTube for you to select, because especially if you're like a more niche product, then you can become ultra specific. And this is the exact targeting that YouTube needs to perform, because you're giving it all of the data from what you already know, not just it trying to guess and go off the audiences that we have. Okay, so now that we have the audience, I'm just not going to save it here for now. What we want to go ahead and do is go to add one, and this is where we can choose the type of ads that we have. So here we obviously want to select video ads because that's what we're going to be pushing, and then we want to have the final URL. In terms of the landing pages, I would say if you already have data from meta ads in terms of what your winners are and where that traffic is being sent to, just match that for YouTube. But I will say a lot of the times educational content has been good on YouTube. So people are watching an ad, they get curious. Instead of pushing them to buy right away, you take them to a page which educates them about the 5 to 10 key features about your product and who the ideal avatar is for it, so that they know, okay, like this is exactly for me. And perhaps even the sales page where you're highlighting some type of offer. Advertorials work as well if you want to take a more educational approach, because again, people are on YouTube to be educated and entertained. So if you can match that type of style, number one, the person is going to have a good experience on your actual landing page or website. And number two, YouTube is actually going to reward you because it sees the engagement is higher. You're going to have cheaper clicks from this campaign. And ultimately, again, that's just going to lead to a high ROAS because it's easier to get performance and your cost per conversion is lower. So here for now, we can just do a product page, and then moving on to how we want to add videos. So typically best practice is upload your creatives, so like whatever videos you have, to YouTube, and then upload them as unlisted. You take the actual YouTube URL, and then you can literally just paste it into here. So that's exactly what we're going to do here. So we have this video, for example. Okay, so now that we have uploaded the videos, what we want to do obviously is make sure we add our logo. And then something we can actually do back at the video section is we can actually choose where our videos show, in the sense like we can prioritize certain placements. So for example, here we just want to focus on in-stream for like a more horizontal video. So like prefer on in-stream, and then we can do shorts for these other two because they're more short style. So that way, again, YouTube has an exact guide on like where we want to push certain placements, so it doesn't kind of go wonky where we start to show shorts in feed type of placements where they're horizontal. And then the next component we have is the headlines, long headlines, and descriptions. What's very interesting is we actually have 40 character headlines here. So there's a little bit more room to be creative with what we're actually saying. What I would challenge you to do is try to be more curiosity driven. So try to spike the person's interest or speak to a specific pain point. So there's a few types of styles of headlines because you only have 5. We want to do a unique selling point, what makes your product unique, speak to a specific pain point, talk about the reviews that you have, loved by X amount of parents for XYZ reason. Also, a exclusive offer is really, really good. For example, you have $1,000 off your first order. If it's, let's say, a super high ticket order, obviously apply it to your brand, but I would make sure we have those 4 to 5 variations as the headlines. And then again, like you have a little bit more room to be creative because again, with search campaigns, as I'm sure you know, maybe you enter 30 character headlines and then there's one that you want that should be like 31, 32, but you can't squeeze it in. So again, you have a lot more room here. And then with the long headlines, I would take similar variations of what we do with the headlines, or even you can look at what you have in your Performance Max campaign. We want to think about the type of people that we're attracting with this campaign, right? Because these people, this is first interaction. Even though I maybe would borrow or use inspiration from Performance Max in terms of the long headlines, we still want to make sure they're tailored to a top of funnel type of audience. And then after you've created those, I would say what you can do is take the headlines and long headlines you have, go into Claude and ask it to put together 90 character descriptions for your YouTube campaign. And it typically does a decent job of doing it. I would say just don't focus too much time on this. Don't spend hours and hours trying to criticize every component of the ad copy, because the largest player is the video. If you have a good video, that is going to trump everything else in terms of the ad copy. Moving on to the next component, I would say that our objective should always be shop now, or you can do something like learn more, again, where you're sending it to an advertorial or an educational type of page. But again, you always want to urge people obviously to purchase. That's the goal. The business name. And then the few settings that I would turn off here are shorter videos. I don't want YouTube to adjust the sizing of our videos. And then there's one other feature, which is called landing page previews. I've actually liked using this because, again, if you have a very good quality site, like above the fold, you have a captivating headline, this can push somebody to actually purchase, because look at the actual difference between the look of the page or look of the ad compared to when we actually have the page and then we don't have the page. So that's all the more reason to make sure your site is actually optimized above the fold, because especially if you have a curiosity driven headline or something super captivating that you know works well, this is instantly going to increase your CTR, right? Because you're taking up more real estate on the actual ad page. And then after that, we want to go to review, and then we can publish the campaign. There's nothing really new here. I don't really listen to any of the estimations or anything here because they're just not accurate, but we set up everything that we needed to set up. And so now that we've published the actual campaign, let's talk about what optimization and actually being able to scale looks like. So in terms of optimization, you always want to optimize for sales, and that should be your main KPI. Because if you're getting a good return on the front end and you're actually generating sales, that should be your reason to just keep throttling budget. And the way that we want to do that is every few days, we increase by 20%, make sure that we're hitting that new daily spend. And then as we start to hit it again, we just keep increasing. And that way, again, it's going to be exponential, right? Because 20% of an increased number of 100, then 150, then 200, it starts to grow super quick. So again, we want to be gradual at the start because we don't want to shock anything. And then we want to increase further when we're obviously starting to get more consistent results, and at a larger budget, you know, each increment of 20% is a lot larger. Something I want to mention as well is you're going to be in a learning phase for the first 7 or so days. I would not touch anything in the campaign. You don't need to upload new creatives. Launch with a solid set of 5 to 10 creatives that you know are performing well. And then in terms of the structure, which I realized I didn't talk too much about, is each ad group can be a certain theme of ads. So if you have a certain product type, or you have certain angles that you want to test that you know have worked well on Meta and you want to test those on YouTube, have those as different ad groups. Because at the end of the day, what's going to happen is YouTube has that $150, for example, per day budget, and then it's going to go and push 80% of the spend to 20% of the creative. That's always what's going to happen, is one or two of the creatives are going to get most of the spend. That's not a problem because they're likely going to convert, and YouTube is able to pick up on that. Because again, you're measuring all of these ads by the same KPI and audience. We're not really running a different audience to start. We're trying to see which creative resonates with our potential buyers because we're running a lookalike. And then after that, we can start to test, new audiences, maybe when we cap out on spend. But the idea is, let's figure out what works. Let's put some spend behind some ads. And then after 7 to 14 days, if we're not getting great results, let's start to pump in more ads, try to retest, get some spend into new creatives and angles, and then we scale those up. So that wraps up my tutorial on how to set up YouTube ads campaigns and actually be successful and be able to scale. This is the approach that I've taken, is starting with a lookalike audience, taking some of our best performing creatives on Meta, and then just trying to scale them up. Eventually, you obviously want to explore making specific creatives for YouTube. Making these creatives has become increasingly simple because of how many AI tools we have at our disposal, and I can link some in the description, which I found to be successful for my clients. But you always want to make sure that you're not making too many changes at once, so you're not constantly throttling with the budget, changing the bidding strategy, or adding a ton of creatives when you're actually in the learning phase. You want to launch it, collect some data for the first 7 to 14 days, assess if it's working. If it is, you continue scaling. If it isn't, you want to test some other creatives until you found some winners, and then you can scale that up. And then in the future, you might also want to horizontally start adding in some more campaigns for different locations. I would not recommend merging multiple locations into one campaign. And if you want to learn more about the other campaigns I like to use to be able to scale Google Ads accounts, I suggest you watch this video. I break down 4 of the other campaigns that I really like to run. This was the tutorial on top of funnel demand gen YouTube campaigns, but then I also talk about shopping, search, performance max, how you layer those into the strategy to really have a full ecosystem on Google and YouTube ads.